I've walked a road that felt less like a gentle path and more like a relentless battlefield. A veteran of more than wars, a survivor of poverty, and a child of trauma. Poverty was my unlikely blessing, teaching me grit before life's fiercest storms arrived. It wasn't just a lack of resources, it was a lack of safety, a lack of trust in the very world around me. I learned how to survive first, how to endure pain, and how to numb the emotions that could tear me apart. But in that survival, there were always those pieces of myself I couldn't protect. The weight of abandonment, of love lost, haunted me from the beginning. Every time I lost love, I lost a piece of myself, a fragment of my identity, my soul, my sense of worth. It felt like a part of me was always leaving with them, drifting away after every goodbye. Each time I wondered, am I supposed to carry this? Is this my burden to bear forever? The questions swirled around me like the chaos of a storm, and I couldn't escape. I kept asking myself, is this normal? Is this how life was meant to be? Is this some twisted punishment for all the love I had lost? I couldn't tell anymore. The past clung to me like a shadow, an invisible weight I couldn't shake. I wondered if I'd ever be free of it, or if I would spend my days haunted by ghosts of love lost, memories of abandonment, and the unanswered questions that echoed through my soul. What is the purpose of this pain? Why does it keep happening? Growing up, I didn't understand the full gravity of my family's struggles. I didn't know why I was always expected to be strong, why there were days when I went without, and nights when I was left alone with my thoughts, my grief, and with my mom gone and no one to answer my questions. I started searching for something, anything, to fill the void. But I found it nowhere. That was when my grandmother's house became a sanctuary, where I could momentarily forget about the weight of my broken home. My grandmother took us in when our parents abandoned us, opening her home, a modest 3-bedroom house with wooden floors that creaked under the weight of our collective history. In that space, surrounded by the strength of her love and the quiet wisdom of Aunt Jean, I felt for a moment like I wasn't alone. Aunt Jean's presence was like a steady pulse, grounding me in ways I couldn't explain. I'll never forget how she would summon us to the kitchen, her hands busy selling cookies for school fundraisers. She'd call us over, and we'd sit, staring into her gray eyes, eyes that had once been warm and full of affection, now tired and serious. Those eyes, almost incomprehensible for a child to understand, held a weight of wisdom and pain that spoke louder than words. In that kitchen, surrounded by the warmth of her home, Aunt Jean sat us down to talk about life, loss, and the unspoken things that we could never quite grasp as kids. She gave us pieces of herself that I wouldn't fully understand until much later. She spoke of life and loss, not just her own, but the loss of things we could never fully comprehend. 2 weeks after that conversation, the word lupus entered our lives for the first time. It was said quietly, almost in passing, but it hit like a thunderclap. And yet, it was too late to say goodbye. The loss was so sudden, its weight so heavy, that I still don't fully understand how it happened. The homegoing ceremony was not for children's eyes or presents. It was a farewell steeped in sorrow that only those who had already faced profound loss could truly understand. I was left to grapple with the reality of Aunt Jean's illness, her struggle with something I couldn't comprehend at the time, and the looming silence that followed. I felt the absence of something I could never replace in that silence. Aunt Jean's love, the way she had always been our pillar, suddenly felt like a fragile thread slipping through my fingers. I could hear the sounds of her laughter, her voice singing along to New Edition songs, but those moments felt like they no longer existed. I had lost something precious. But it wasn't just Aunt Jean I had lost. It was the part of me that believed love could always overcome the most brutal battles. That belief was shattered, and I found myself standing in the middle of a storm with no way to navigate it. But even within the warmth of my grandmother's house, there was still the shadow of loss. The year before Aunt Jean's passing, we experienced the tragic loss of my cousin Marvin. Marvin had been a constant presence, someone I relied on, someone who understood the world's weight in ways no one else could. Losing Marvin felt like losing a brother, someone who had always been there for me, guiding me when I was unsure of the path ahead. He had been there for every milestone, every moment I thought I couldn't make it through. And now, he was gone. I still vividly remember those afternoons on Chester Drive, where Marvin patiently taught us how to swim. The water was warm, the sun was high, and Angela's laughter floated across the pool like a melody, her voice full of innocence and joy. Andre's laughter followed close behind, his energy contagious as he dove in and out of the water with a carefree spirit. Those moments felt like the perfect illusion of childhood, a promise that life would always be as easy as those summer days. But as suddenly as a storm, that promise was shattered. The laughter stopped, the pool went silent, and I was left standing on the edge of childhood's end. The light of innocence dimmed, and I stood in the dark, struggling to catch my breath. That loss, so raw and sudden, left me feeling adrift. But even amid it, something anchored me, my Uncle Kelvin. Kelvin wasn't just my uncle, he was my protector, a man whose presence kept us grounded. He had been my guiding figure, standing firm when everything around us seemed to collapse. Even after losing Marvin, I could still rely on him. His strength was something I could always count on, even as I carried the weight of Marvin's absence. I had felt lost in the wake of Marvin's death, feeling like a part of me had been torn away that I'd never get back. But Kelvin's presence was unwavering, and when the world felt crumbling, he was the one constant I could cling to. The loss of Marvin had broken something inside me, but my Uncle Kelvin's protection and strength became the rope I held on to, even as I tried to navigate the treacherous waters of grief. Yet, even that anchor was pulled away too soon. The devastating truth hit like a wave crashing against me, and I found myself facing yet another loss. Uncle Kelvin didn't just move away, he left. And with that, I lost the foundation I had leaned on my whole life. It felt like my protector had been pulled from beneath me when I needed him the most. Who would have thought that at the same age I moved out of my grandmother's house at 16, I would also lose the foundation I had leaned on my whole life? I was caught between the need for independence and the cruel reality that those I loved were slipping through my fingers. It was as though I was desperately trying to keep my balance, while the world kept taking away everything I'd counted on to stay grounded. Uncle Kelvin wasn't just my uncle. He was my brother, my protector in a world that often felt indifferent. His absence created a void that echoed through every corner of my life, reminding me that the things we love can be taken from us when we least expect it. But through that loss, I learned that the pieces of ourselves that leave with those we love don't just vanish. They become part of us, woven into the fabric of who we are, shaping us, molding us into someone stronger than we ever thought possible. Losing Marvin and Kelvin didn't break me. It made me realize that the strength I had been relying on wasn't just their strength. It was mine, too. The lessons they taught me about love, resilience, and survival didn't die with them. They became my inheritance, passed down in the quiet, unspoken moments after they were gone. When I think back to Chester Drive, it wasn't just the loss that shaped me. It was the moments of joy, the fleeting times when it seemed like everything was going to be okay. I remember those small victories, the little moments of peace I found in the simplest things, like when I'd get to work on the motorcycle with my dad. My dad and I would spend hours together in the driveway, me trying to fix the bike, feeling like I was a part of something bigger. There was a black sedan that used to stop by, a well-dressed man inside who would exchange fishing tales with my dad. One day he asked me what I was doing, and I said proudly, "I'm fixing my dad's motorcycle." He gave me a nod, a gesture that seemed so small at the time but would stick with me. Years later it would hit me. That man wasn't just being polite, he was giving me validation. And I realized that nod, that quiet approval, had shaped my path. It was in that moment that something clicked within me. I wasn't just a kid working on a motorcycle. I was someone capable of more. That nod made me believe in myself for the first time. That well-to-do professional man would drive by and trade fishing tales with my dad in the driveway, and I'd see him nod as he passed. Sometimes he even asked where I was as a child, exhilarating me and making me feel alive. He wasn't just a neighbor, a figure of quiet strength, a silent observer who seemed to carry the weight of wisdom without speaking it aloud. I'd watch him from a distance, his steady presence like an unspoken reassurance that somehow, despite all the turmoil, everything would eventually be okay. I didn't realize it then, but Fred wasn't just a neighbor in passing. He was an anchor, one of the few that remained grounded when everything around me felt crumbling. In his silent way, he told me that I wasn't alone. I think he knew more about me than I was ready to admit, but his nod and quiet acknowledgement were all I needed to keep going. It was a message of solidarity, a reminder that even in the most challenging times, you could still find a way to stand tall. Then there was the day I was pulled aside. I was rebellious, testing limits, acting out in ways only a 16-year-old could. I'd learned to drink during lunch breaks and on weekends, to fill the emptiness with something that made me feel alive, even for a moment. I felt lost, chasing after distractions and momentary escapes, trying to bury the pain. But then, that man, the same one who had nodded at me so many years ago when I was just a kid fixing my dad's bike, pulled me aside. I froze. Something about his gaze stopped me in my tracks. He looked at me, and then the words came, "You're not the same person you were when I saw you fixing your dad's motorcycle all those years ago." It was deep, almost spiritual validation that I hadn't realized I needed. But then came the change. He told me, "If you keep going down this road, I'll give you an F so big that UPS will have to deliver it." His words hit me like a slap across the face. That moment shifted something in me. I knew he was right. I wasn't the person I wanted to be, and the reckless path I was on wasn't the answer. It wasn't just a wake-up call, but the beginning of a transformation. In that moment of reckoning, I realized the stakes of my choices, and how far I had strayed from who I wanted to be. The weight of the decisions I'd made, the direction I was headed, was suffocating. But just as quickly as that moment of clarity arrived, so did the question of what came next. I was running out of options. I needed something more to build me up and make me strong. The very thing I had avoided for so long was staring me in the face: discipline. But even before the military came into view, I realized how much time I had already wasted. Fred Jackson had made it clear in his quiet way that I was better than the path I was on, but I was still running from my potential. Even as I kept up appearances, I hid tons of Ivy League scholarships from my grandmother, my chance at a life far beyond what I thought I could. But fear, self-doubt, and the belief that I wasn't worthy had kept me from considering those opportunities. It wasn't until that moment, when Fred and others, like that well-dressed man who had nodded at me so many years ago, gave me the validation I needed, that I realized I had been wasting time. The possibility of something greater was always there, but I'd been too afraid to grab it. And so when the military called, it seemed like my last shot at redemption. It wasn't just a way out. It was my chance to redefine myself, to take control of my future. Looking back, I can only describe it as divine timing. Those 6 months after graduation were a blur of wasted potential, hidden scholarships, buried beneath layers of shame and fear. I had been living a life trying to escape, but deep down, I knew I was only running in circles. I worked as a manager at a pizza restaurant, but in the back of my mind, I knew it wasn't enough. I remember running to one in Delhi, LA, trying to scrape by so I could afford a few classes at Northeast University, but by then the scholarships were gone. Opportunity slipped away and I was stuck in a cycle I couldn't escape. But let me tell you, a defining moment changed everything. My Uncle Kelvin, who had always been the steady force in our lives, took leave from the military. He could have stayed away, minding his business, but he didn't. He showed up. He showed up for me. My grandmother had found the scholarships, and he didn't waste a second when she shared the news with him. He pulled up to that pizza joint, snatched me outside, not physically, but in the most deliberate, piercing way that made it clear. I had no more excuses. His eyes were filled with urgency and truth as he told me, "You're not wasting your potential. You're not throwing your life away." His words and voice sliced through the fog I'd built around myself. I had no more options, not if I wanted to move forward. He showed me what I had been too afraid to see. I wasn't just here to exist. I was meant to thrive. The life he'd spoken into us, the life he'd lived with resilience through pain and sacrifice, it was now mine to choose. I thought back to the laughs of my brother Sean getting his car stuck in the front yard, to the days when we wanted to drive and would disguise it as, "Let me wash your car." I thought of the blue Beretta Justin and I racing up and down the gravel road when my grandmother was away, and how no matter where she hid the keys, we always found them. I wasn't innocent by any means, but those memories, the ones that felt like mischief at the time, were part of my identity. They were my truth. Yet I was so much more than those fleeting moments of rebellion. Uncle Kelvin's voice, steady and commanding, pierced through the fog of my immaturity. It wasn't just about avoiding the mistakes my family had made or running from the chaos. It was about finding purpose. It was about rising above the noise and reclaiming my life. That moment with him, those words, ignited a spark that I couldn't ignore. I knew what I had to do. I called my cousin Kevin Robinson, a military recruiter, and I felt like I was taking the right step for the first time in my life. The next chapter began. Kevin had always been a quiet but steady influence on me. When I reached out to him, complaining about how everyone around me seemed to be getting military bonuses, except for me, he didn't just brush it off. He listened. He heard my frustration. But then, Kevin gave me something more valuable than any bonus check could have offered. He set me up for success in ways I hadn't even considered. He ensured I understood the path ahead, not just the next step, but the long journey. I remember griping about how everyone else seemed to be reaping the rewards while I was stuck on the outside. I expected him to offer me sympathy or tell me it would get better, but instead, Kevin grounded me in something I desperately needed: perspective. He explained that the military didn't just offer short-term rewards, it gave you tools for life, an education, and a future if you were willing to work. He didn't just sign me up, he gave me the blueprint, the strategy. He pushed me to see that the real dividends, the actual rewards, wouldn't be the bonuses I could cash in now. They'd be the life lessons, the discipline, and the growth I'd experience along the way. He set me up for success in a way no paycheck ever could. I complained about not getting a bonus, but Kevin didn't stop there. He forewent me signing up for any bonus, instead directing me to a one-year college fund, which at the time pissed me off. I couldn't understand why he was doing this, setting me up with something that didn't give me the immediate reward I was expecting. It felt like I was being shortchanged. But Kevin knew what I didn't, that this wasn't just about me making a quick buck. It was about building a future. Years later, I looked back and realized that the one-year college fund was more than just a small gesture. It was a lifeline. As I struggled to carve out a career, that one-year fund provided me with a financial cushion and security on top of my GI Bill. It set me up in ways that no bonus could have ever done, allowing me to focus on my education, career, and building a better life. Looking back, it's clear that Kevin's guidance wasn't just about navigating the military. It was about navigating life. His words and belief in me gave me the strength I needed to trust in myself and embrace the discipline and purpose I had been running from for so long. And when I finally joined, the bonuses and rewards didn't matter to me anymore. What mattered was that I had the foundation to build something real, something lasting. In the barracks, I learned discipline, but soon discovered that no regulation could shield me from the wars waged in my mind. After bullets and orders abroad, I came home to a new front line, invisible scars no one could see. I wrestled with self-worth, haunted by a voice whispering, "You're not enough," even as I stood in crisp uniform under scrutiny. I sank into shadows, convinced the tenacity that got me through basic training would never heal the fractures inside me. So I clung to duty and service, pouring myself into every mission like a soldier on autopilot, because it was easier than staring at the fragile soul beneath my uniform. So raw, so unprotected, it terrified me. In the barracks, I learned discipline, but soon discovered that no regulation could shield me from the wars waged in my mind. After bullets and orders abroad, I came home to a new front line, invisible scars no one could see. I wrestled with self-worth, haunted by a voice whispering, "You're not enough," even as I stood in crisp uniform under scrutiny. I sank into shadows, convinced the tenacity that got me through basic training would never heal the fractures inside me. So I clung to duty and service, pouring myself into every mission like a soldier on autopilot, because it was easier than staring at the fragile soul beneath my uniform. So raw, so unprotected, it terrified me. I kept telling myself that strength would come through discipline, through accomplishment. But I was suffocating even as I climbed the ladder, earned every accolade, and kept pushing through. The same lessons that had gotten me through my darkest times now felt like chains I couldn't break free from. My mind, my heart, my soul, still bruised and battered from the losses that had already defined my journey, had yet to heal. And I was too afraid to admit it. The idea that a man, especially a black man, could struggle, could be vulnerable, could need help, that was something I had been taught to bury deep inside. Therapy, self-care, opening up, those weren't things I could admit to needing. That was a black man's kryptonite, something I thought would make me weak. But life, the weight of my history, had forced me to face myself. I had no other choice. I had to confront the pieces of myself that had been broken for so long. And that's when I realized healing wasn't about fixing myself in one fell swoop. It was about accepting that I was, and always would be, a work in progress. It was about learning to navigate the storm, step by step, until I could find a place where I didn't just survive, but thrived. That was the lesson I had been taught all along, from the warmth of Aunt Jean's home to the steady guidance of Marvin and the protection of Uncle Kelvin. Every loss, every fracture, every painful goodbye had been preparing me for this moment, when I could finally stand, broken but unbowed, and say, I'm still here.